Last time we did the build of the hardware for this ultimate emulation machine. Today we are concentrating on the software. This is a Diet Pi install with Amiberry. There are tons of how-tos on YouTube on how to do this, so I will not bore the world with another video telling them how to set up Wi-Fi and do all the Linux stuff. So let's dig into the Amiga software, because I think that's the interesting part. It might be some years since you touched an Amiga, especially one with hard drive, if you ever did. So I will concentrate on that. Sadly, I don't have a capture card, so I will do my best with the camera, and let's see how it goes. Hopefully this will do the job. This setup is, as I said, Amiberry on a Diet Pi. It's a Debian based distro. Is set up 2 hard drives as directories. Just add directory and choose a directory to use as hard drive for the Amiga. I have set up 2 of them, one for system, which is bootable, and one called work. I also have some pre-downloaded stuff I want to have on my Amiga. So let's choose the folder I made for that, and I'll just call it software. Set it to not bootable. In chipset I'm going for an Amiga 1200, so I have AGA. In CPU I'm emulating a 60040 with just-in-time enabled. RAM, I've given it 64 megabytes of fast RAM and bumped the chip RAM to 8 megabytes. I would love having that back in the days, but it would not be possible. In sound, I've enabled the floppy drive sound. I like the sound of it. It's one of the nostalgic things with the Amiga. And that's it. So as you see, the Amiga see the hard drive, but it doesn't have Workbench installed, so it just boot into Amiga DOS, which is in the ROMs. So let's start the installation of Workbench. So we go to floppy drive, choose the Workbench disk. In the second one, put the install disk. And now we can reboot Amiga with Control Amiga, and it should boot from floppy. And it does. I set the emulation of the flop drive to be as fast as possible, so we don't have to wait for floppies. Of course, if you remember back in the days, they were quite slow. So as you remember, we inserted the install disk, and under install we have the installation, and I will choose the English installer. So just hit proceed and install release 3.1 and novice. I don't remember if that asks us about everything we need. So we take intermediate user, proceed with install for real, proceed, and it asks if I want to install release 3.1 to the sys partition, and yes, that's what we want. And I only want to install English. I do not intend to print. Which key map do I install? This is a Norwegian keyboard, so I install norsk, and I don't remember what's default, British or American, but I install those as well. And it asks for the Amiga local. So let's swap some disks. Let's eject that and insert the local. And hit proceed. And now it wants the extra floppy. So let's choose the extra and hit proceed. It claims my hard drive is full. It was the Amiga storage. Resume. Proceed. Now it wants the installation disk. That's Workbench installed. Snapshot everything. The next step is to install some software, and as you remember, I added a software partition which seems blank, but that's only because if you remember from earlier days, last time you used Amiga, the Amiga doesn't show anything if there is no icons on the files, so we have to go to the menu, window, show all files. This is what we have. So what we need is LHA to unpack everything. There. Now we should be able to copy So what most people are interested in is using WHDLoad to run games that were originally made for floppies. So let's install that, but first we need to unpack it. So we are in the software partition, and we can unpack WHDLoad user small. That's LHA X WHDLoad user small LHA. So now it should be extracted, and we should be able to see it inside our software partition. And here it is, WHDLoad. And let's run the installer, which I do not have. The installer is now copied into my software directory. Hopefully it will show up, and it did. Installer 43.3 should be the newest. I always write the Unix commandos, alas, it's been too many years. So we need to unpack the installer. 43, not all keys are in a perfect shape. I forgot to add the X. Now we should be able to install the installer. So what we want is the installer copied into C in the system folder. So we just drag it over there. It works. Now we should be able to do the WHDLoad installer. Let's try, and it works. Let's proceed. Install for real. We install it in C. And the help files, the default location, and the installation is complete. I have copied in one game, Pinball Fantasies, which we need to unpack in work, which is the third partition we made. We can make a drawer, name WHDLoad games, where we can copy Pinball Fantasies. And I think we need to unpack it. We enter, some of the keys are really need to rename it to make it shorter. Work to write it. So we unpack it with LHAX Fantasies. And now we should have Pinball Fantasies AGA. Now that WHDLoad is installed and we have copied Pinball Fantasies into the folder, I know it probably needs the kickstart, so let's check the readme. Blah blah blah. It said it needs the util skick, which can be found on Aminet, so I will put that into my directory, which I mounted as a partition. So now we have installed WHDLoad and we have placed Pinball Fantasies here. It should now be able to start just by double clicking. There is one thing that needs to be in place for this to work, and that is a package that is on Aminet for free download, which is called skick. So you need to install that package from Aminet, and then after you have done that, place your copy of the kickstart in devs. It's not showing the kickstarts. And I use the kickstart from the Amiga 4000 for this. It needs to start different files. Here it is. So it needs to be called kick 40,068.A4000 if you are using the A4000 kick ROM. Anyway, if you buy Amiga Forever, you will get all the ROMs. So I just picked one on random, the Amiga 4001, and put it into here. So that's the only step needed. The reason I couldn't do that inside Workbench is because I needed to copy it to the computer. So I did it through SSH. Let's try the game. It should be working. Let's select the table, Partyland. And the Amiga keys are working. Haven't played it in a long time. Oh. Okay, so it works. So let's reboot. There we have it. Amiga Workbench on a Raspberry Pi, booting directly into Workbench. So in a way it feels like an Amiga. It uses a bit more time to boot than a real Amiga, but for everything else it feels like the real deal. This is the software on the Amiga 500. There are alternatives if you don't wish to do this manually with the Amiga image. I have copied the configuration and disks from the Amiga project into this just to test it, and he has done a wonderful job collecting everything. The problem with everything is that you don't know what to do. If you want to play a game, it's impossible to choose because there are, I'm just picking a number, thousands of them. And this Workbench, I plan to install what I use, not everything. So there you have it. So this is the final boot. Now it should boot directly into the Workbench 3.1 we installed. As you can see, it takes some time compared to a real Amiga. But there we have it. Everything looks and feels and behaves like the real deal. Thanks for watching.